Um, I mean, it wasn't like anywhere else. Kind of best you made of it, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if I wasn't here, I'd want to be at the beach like you guys for sure.
Did you guys go down the shore a lot when you were a kid? Did you have a location like Lavalette or Seaside or one of those?
Yeah. So we had one. My mom's parents lived in Ocean Gate, and they had
Okay.
a house down there. So we'd go down there all summer. And my dad's parents were in Tom's River.
Okay.
So I mean, we were seaside, Island Beach,
So
all
you're
that
like
stuff.
a kind of like an Ocean County guy.
Yeah, I mean,
Part-time.
a Betty. Yeah, yeah, still a Betty,
Right
but
on.
it was fun though. Loved
Right
it.
on. We'll get into that. All right, we are live. We're back on the mat tonight. We're going belly to belly with Dave Esposito. Dave is the owner of the Edge in Hoboken. Dave is a two-time NCAA Division I All-American, finishing third and second. He's a two-time EIWA champion, twice named Outstanding Wrestler at Lehigh University, twice the team captain, and was also named Male Athlete of the Year at Lehigh. Dave is a three-time New Jersey State place finisher, finishing third, second, and third, with most notably a win over yours truly in the 1993 Super Regions. Dave was a freshman, I was a junior, and he packed me up and wrapped me up in a cradle pretty quickly and got out of there within the first minute. So we are honored and pleasured to have you with us tonight, Dave. How are you? How you been? Welcome to Airey Bros Radio.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys. Been a long time coming, Rich, to catch
Yeah,
up.
I know we've crossed paths a couple times here or there over the years, but I've been traveling around for probably the last decade or so with some time in California, Oklahoma, Colorado, and now in South Carolina. Um, but wrestling is kind of something that I've always stayed a fan of, even with my running career and being in Colorado or actually in Oklahoma too. It allowed me the opportunity to take in college wrestling at Oklahoma State. And then in Colorado, we got to become fans of the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. So as we started doing the podcast, we started reaching out to more and more people within the wrestling space because Jimmy and I are, like I said, are big fans, and we might not have the ability right now to coach, but whatever we can do to grow the sport and help the sport, we try to do our part. So we like to have people like yourself that own and operate clubs, college coaches of all divisions, and just kind of give athletes some insight into what it takes to be a championship athlete and a championship wrestler.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So,
Happy to be
Dave,
on.
yeah, we're stoked. Probably the most important question I'm going to ask you all night. We just as we jumped on here, you were mentioned you were a little bit of a Benny, spent some time in Ocean County in the summer, but really you're a North Jersey guy. And the most important question of the evening is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
I mean, I got a little 6-year-old, so we call it pork roll. It's little,
Oh,
he calls it a little porky roll.
okay,
So still a little guy, so I'm breaking him in that way. But
okay.
yeah, I think more pork roll.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that. What about you, Jim? Did you think it was going to be pork roll from Dave?
Well, I was because he went to JFK Island, and that's more like Central
Oh yeah,
Jersey.
that's right on the cusp there for sure.
Yeah, we're like the nomads. We don't belong anywhere really.
Is that Middlesex County?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that Edison?
Island, close.
Island.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dave, you had mentioned when we hopped on being in Hoboken and being an urban cowboy these days,
Mm-hmm.
and with the Edge Hoboken, you're right by the city, and you guys have the NYRTC there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you just have awesome wrestlers popping in all the time, maybe not even scheduled? Next thing you know, you turn around and there's a world champ or something like that?
Being with the RTC for sure. I mean, we have Kendall Cross, so we're fortunate to have an Olympic champion there pretty much, all the time. But yeah, we had done a couple USA camps that we had hosted back when Zeke Jones was the team leader. So Burroughs, Snyder, like we had amazing guys walking the door, and it was one of those things, Roberto, who we have he might not have been up at Edge before, but we have pretty cool design, and we have these awesome pull-up bars and like a big like kind of sign that says desire. And I kind of had the idea, like when we were having all these guys come up, let's have them sign the wall. So we have this pretty sick wall of like, you know, besides Burroughs, Taylor, Dake, who's who, we've had sign it, Chamizo, Kishkavili. So we've been really fortunate to have these guys roll through, and just not that you get used to it, but same time you kind of feel like this is the right place to kind of have these guys in and train. It's a really nice facility. And we've had, little 5-year-olds, up to like college, MMA fighters, everyone kind of rolling through there, training, just hanging out and being around like really high level guys. And they've all been real gracious and welcoming. And, it's one of the great things about being so close to New York is people want to come to New York. It's just a hot spot, foreigners from all over. It's just nice being in Hoboken. It's a little quieter than the city. So they could come in, train, and then they could pop in the city and kind of hit what they want to hit. So it's a great location when it comes to that.
Was that the goal, or did that just kind of happen based on location? What was your goal when you kind of opened up the club?
I was fortunate being given the opportunity. My boss that I was working for had a couple of sons that wanted to wrestle, and I come across this place and was like, "Hey, do you want to put an Edge in here?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So it's kind of just evolved from there. So it wasn't so much planned as it was just presented, and just kind of ran with it. And it's been like it's a part-time thing for myself. So I have, a good crew, awesome guys that have helped grow it through years, and we continue to grow it. So it's one of those things where it kind of comes about and then you make the most of it.
When your boss presented the opportunity to you, you were still involved with wrestling up to that point, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was coaching at the Edge. I was coaching, and besides being at Edge since I was like 9 years old, just kind of after I finished up at Lehigh, I coached with Ernie for a year, and then I coached at Columbia University for 2 years, got my master's. Then I was right back at it with Ernie. So, back when we first started, I was running between, regular job. Then I run up, coach with Ernie at whatever facility he was at the time. And then I popped back to Hoboken and was running back between both of them. And I had guys helping me out as well. But it was one of those things where I was, wherever I was needed to be, I was at. And then, fast forward now with COVID and being married with the son, things have changed quite a bit. But it's nice to have a great facility up here and great guys helping out.
Was coaching wrestling, being a wrestling coach, was that something that was always on your radar? I know you mentioned you were an Edge guy since the time you were like 8 or 9. Was being involved in coaching wrestling something you had always thought of?
Yeah, it kind of, when you're around great coaches, you kind of, want to give back to the sport, obviously. Like I was always one of those wrestlers where as much as I wanted to win for myself, I knew how much time and effort and, how much care people put into myself. So I always wanted to give that back and provide that opportunity for other people. Whether they kind of sought me out or, I just came across them. It was one of those things where it's just part of the sport. If you wrestled and you've been around good people and you kind of see how much you learn from the sport, that you want to give back. So I always knew I was going to coach in some capacity. As of late, I've stepped back quite a bit. And I'm more on that, like kind of outside, higher managerial end of it all. But, when opportunity presents to get back on the mat, I definitely do. Before Zach left Colorado Springs, the training center, I was out there with another one of my buddies and his sons. And, of course, Zach and I got to scrap a little bit, older brother, younger brother. So that felt good, and I was surprised the altitude didn't get me as much as I thought it was, but it's probably because I was having so much fun just rolling around with them and you know being like big kids.
Do you still have the upper hand as a big brother?
No way,
No.
no way. Mm,
How are
no,
those roles? Because Rich and I we can't touch each other because that will become deadly. How are those? Are they fun, like you said?
yeah, it's definitely fun. Like if I get lucky and Zach like trips on a banana peel or something, I'll get a takedown. But otherwise he takes it easy. I mean, he knows I'm an old man at this point, and he's still in it and rolling. He's probably gonna start backing off a little bit, but you both get we have injuries from wrestling forever. It's not one of those things where we're trying to kill each other like we were back in the day. But I'd say like once Zach was in college and really rolling hard, and I was like more of a civilian coach, that he started getting the upper hand on me. And then definitely when he was in his open level career, he was a hammer then. And I would go from regular work and coaching, and then he'd have a training camp or something coming up, and I fly out to Oklahoma and we train for like a week, and I get my ass kicked, and you know come back more humble than ever. But it was always fun to help him out and train like that. You know, give him what he needed, and just be his training partner. Be his drilling dummy and wrestling dummy was kind of nice.
Was
Dave,
that hard when the tide started to turn a little bit at first?
Um, not not really. I mean, I didn't have that kind of ego. Like
Yeah.
I felt like if he couldn't beat me, then there's he's not going to win at that next level. When I'm like having a couple beers the night before and then trying to roll with them the next day. I wasn't training full time, so I was happy to see the tides turn. It meant he was progressing and doing what he had to do to jump a level.
Mm.
you mentioned you knew he needed to beat you to kind of be at that next level because you were having a beer the night before. Did you align with him at all? Were you already out of college when he was in high school?
Yeah. So my yeah, I had 1 year. So I was a senior and he was a junior in high school. So then I was fortunate to have 1 year where he was still a senior in high school and I had just graduated. So it was the year before I had gone to Columbia. So I had one. So it was fortunate I could drive down to Blair and I can roll with him, a couple times during the month. And there he tried to kill me there, especially, because he's trying to prove himself a little bit more, and being in that room was stacked, and a lot of pride, and I was still in it enough where I could still put it on him. So that was cool. And then while I was at Columbia, it was nice to be back in college and coaching, and that was his freshman year and sophomore year I was around. So that was really cool to kind of cross over in that capacity.
Did you have a moment, not necessarily wrestling him, or maybe it was, but watching him wrestle or seeing him do something and knowing like, wow, he's onto something? Or did you already know that because you guys grew up at the Edge? You guys were pretty good growing up in general.
I mean, Zach was fortunate to have three older brothers and be around wrestling since he was in his diapers, and kind of you know, learning from us, so not always making those mistakes and getting that kind of like cliff notes, if you will, of how to get good fast and be around great coaches. He definitely hit a rough patch here and there, but for the most part, I think I always knew he was going to be something special. And he just do some things that he'd watch a video of like sativa, or he's watching some capoeira back in the day, and he hits like this weird cartwheel out of nowhere, so he always had that feel, I'd say. And you train hard, you develop it, and then you're going to be good.
Talking about the Edge, you mentioned you had been there since you were like 8 or 9, and being around good coaches, and your brother being around good coaches and having older brothers. I don't know what happened to Jimmy, but um, how did you guys discover the Edge? How did that all come about? You were pretty, 90, 92, 93. That was pretty much as far as on my radar, the Edge being the club that everyone kind of, you saw those kids with the Edge shirts on or the Edge sweatshirt, and you're like, oh, this is a well-trained individual. They're gonna be it's gonna be a tough day. How did that come about for you?
So we started off like everybody else, like the rec, Woodbridge rec. We had a great coach, Scott Joe Perez, and amongst others. And there was another um, kid that wrestled with us, guy Weldon Huff. You might remember
Yep.
his dad was, you know, always seeking to get him better and from the same area. So, I approached my our parents and say, hey, you should take them to see Ernie Monaco, the Edge, and was fortunate enough that we would drive from Island, Menlo Park Terrace up to Belleville, like 2-3 days a week, and it was almost an hour trip, 45 minutes, and we just kind of got in there, and then started developing a relationship with Ernie, his wife Marissa, and all the guys are up there, and just kind of took off from there. So we just stuck with it, and we enjoyed it, and then next thing you know, we were wrestling freestyle and then wrestling all year round. From like I was in third, fourth grade on. We just kind of got that bug, and we played other sports, but we always knew that wrestling was going to be a sport for us.
I think Weldon, he was the guy that didn't make weight that
He
we
did.
got
He
in.
was he was the guy that snuck in. Yeah, because I had taken fourth at the region, so I didn't get that place, and then I got bumped up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd known him forever,
Okay.
and so it was pretty ironic.
Yeah, that was such a interesting. And again, I look back on it now as a 48-year-old, and again, one of the reasons why we have this podcast and talk to coaches and stuff is Jimmy and I try to present conversations for athletes that we wish coaches or people we were around that would have had us so we could avoid certain things or maybe had a little bit more success. And I was mentioning to Jimmy before you jumped on was that I had I had someone had said, that your kid's not making weight or whatever. So I had just gotten into my head that I was going to have a forfeit,
Well,
and then
yeah,
they're like, oh no, the fourth place guy, you're wrestling the fourth place guy. And so, but there was no one, I was all, my coaches were like on their way out. After
yeah,
I graduated, they got, we got new cross country track coaches, new wrestling coaches, and we got some new blood in there. And so no one like pulled me aside and was like, shook me over, like, hey, you have to wrestle. Like, you have to win this match to go to the next one, or this is what this person does. Or so I was just kind of just took me by surprise. And I mean, obviously you were a great wrestler and had a lot of success. So who knows if the outcome might have been any different, but at least having someone to say, hey, you need to get your mind right and realize that you do have to wrestle this match. Because the ref blew the whistle and next thing I knew I was in a cradle and I got pinned
yeah.
and it was over.
Well, it's kind yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting how on the flip side of that, right? Like I went from thinking my season's over,
Mm,
the week before, I'm like I'm done, and my older brother Matt, had made it down there, so I was small, for a 3 pounder, I wasn't big cutting weight or anything, so I pretty much, took the trip, and I knew Weldon was having a tough time making weight, so it was those things where you didn't know for sure, and we're lucky that Woodbridge and Island, they're right next to each other. That the coach was nice enough to say, hey, he's not making weight. So, I looked at like, wow, I got a second chance to crack at it. Like, I got to take advantage of it. So
did you who was the region champ in Region 5 that year? Do you remember?
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if it
And
was. I'm not sure.
yeah, and I always talk about too, like those 2 years, my junior and senior years, kind of like the years in freestyle where they had the ball grab. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
we had the super region those 2 years, so it was like no matter what, you had to wrestle guys within your region, and I had McGrath and I had Ramos, and
Yeah.
I ended up wrestling, I had to wrestle McGrath at Super Regions my senior year, and then in the wrestlebacks, I had to wrestle Ramos again. So I mean, I wrestled Ramos in the districts too, so I just couldn't get away
Wow.
from those kids. Whereas if we were down in Atlantic City the whole time, maybe the bracket might have been a little bit different. Um, so yeah, that's how I look at those 2 years with the Super Regions.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's totally different, right? Like they kind of start moving everybody around. So,
Yeah.
so it might have been the guy Shearer from Bridgewater that beat me
Okay.
in the semis, but too many memories to remember. I
Yeah.
remember a lot of the bad ones, and
Yeah. We
and
always do.
some of the good ones, but yeah, you know,
Well, and then fast forward, a bunch of years later when I'm running college track and doing those sorts of things, and you're in the NCAA finals, I'm like, okay, I got beat by someone pretty freaking legit.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things where I just never went in high school states. Definitely had something to do with you know motivation for college, and and pushing me and never feeling like I was really ever satisfied, and I knew there was something more. So I'm sure like your wrestling career helped your cross country career, just as much, taking
Oh
those
yeah,
experiences and that
definitely.
mentality and everything.
And it was, I look back on it too, is I never, when wrestling season ended, like track season had already started. So I was going, like, I never really, even the last match my senior year of states, I just didn't really, it, not that it didn't sink in or anything, or like this was the end. It was just like, well, I have this to do, so I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. And then I was doing recruiting trips for cross country and track. So I never, and maybe that's why I've always still loved the sport of wrestling. I know some people end their wrestling career and they go off, you know, they never want to see a
Hmm.
wrestling mat or look at a headgear ever again. I never had that because, again, I sure wrestling ended, but it was I'm on the track and I'm doing that anyway. So it was I've always remained a fan and love, and I love the thing I love about it now is that it seems like kids love the sport of wrestling. They talk about it with such passion. Where I was an anomaly on my team, doing things in the off season and stuff where the kids were complaining about. I'm like, why are you here if you don't like doing this? Like, sure, cutting weight isn't that fun, but like,
Yeah.
if you don't like the sport, why are you doing it?
Yeah, especially wrestling. It's a brutal sport to not enjoy, Um, I do remember, those Fargo camps where you would smoke everybody in those morning runs, like Warren Reed would do his whistle, like, get you up in the morning, and then I hated that because it was time to run in those hills. But I remember you smoking pretty much everybody.
Yeah, that was my
You
wheelhouse.
Yeah.
What when did the MMA come into it for you?
Um, you know, I always kind of started. Well, I always watched, right, like everybody else. I had some buddies that from Lehigh that got into jujitsu and were going to Henzo's in the city. So that's pretty much where it started. Hitting some of that, getting some jujitsu in and rolling, and winning a couple tournaments, here and there with my friends, and then um, Frankie Edgar was starting to train more, and he was one of those younger guys coming up that I saw, but not an opportunity presented itself for me to actually fight. Um, I was like 30 at the time, I think, and not competing or really doing much, just coaching and working. So when it came up, it was one of those things where I was allowed to, train 2 months for it, and it was just a fight my buddy Warren threw in Costa Rica that against some guy and train, which was a pretty cool experience because I got to travel around and hung with a lot of like meet Henzo a little bit more and train with him. John Danaher gave me my purple belt. Um, it's all these other young fighters that I got to like kind of battle with. I got to meet Frankie and train with him a little bit more and get get beat up with him. So, I had to fight down there that that I ended up winning, and then I retired. So I went undefeated in my career down there. And I just kind of stuck with it, coaching guys here and there, doing little jujitsu and working with Frankie. And then I was fortunate to have a lot of people come through the Edge, and we transitioned. And that's why we started MMA up there. David Branch was our jujitsu coach. I had gotten to know him while training, and he was running our jujitsu program. But like Damian Maya would come in, like a lot of these top level guys would all start rolling in, and we'd start training them in wrestling, high level jujitsu guys, high level fighters. And it was kind of the natural thing, to kind of provide that outlook on, because, if you watch a lot of early wrestling, it wasn't very good, in UFC and MMA. So just kind of helped develop some good skills and techniques that a lot of jujitsu back then gave you, bad positioning and all those things that we had to clean up a lot, So a lot of jujitsu guys would come to us, and we work with them and school them up in wrestling, and had some success with it.
Dave, what did you notice was the biggest difference in wrestling for MMA and wrestling for wrestling? Because once, Rich and I played around with it a little bit and trying to figure out that range and the distance and realizing you have to be pretty close. You can't just be shooting without being able to touch a guy, and seeing guys that had no wrestling at all, but that were scrappy and athletic, being able to pop right up from a takedown where you're taking all this time, and the next thing you know, he's standing up, or he's giving you his back, or he's putting his back on the mat, and then he's coming up. You're like, what the hell? My wrestling doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean and that's one of the toughest things too. Like, you could work really hard for a takedown, and think you got him down, and then you can't relax. It's if you can't hold them down, you just got yourself really tired. Trying to just get to a strong position, and then next thing you know, the guy's up on his feet again. So I think that's a lot of it is, like you said, like that distance and covering, distance fast and safely, definitely comes to mind. Being able to layer things, like set things up the right way, not just blindly shooting because it's there, being able to slip, being able to strike and putting like combinations together, but not just striking combinations, but, being a wrestler, you got to use your fakes, like use your wrestling as a threat, to help get you in on shots. So being able to mix fakes, like hand fighting things in there, strikes, giving a guy a lot of different things to think about, and then your wrestling shots come a lot easier, a lot of timing. I think of Damian Maya, like when he first came to us, he was shooting to his knees a lot, footwork wasn't really there, which hurts too, because your timing's really got to be on point, body position, head position, and just being able to close that distance the right way and fast and put things together. And, Damian ended up being like one of the better, wrestling MMA guys out there. Frankie obviously had great wrestling, and he could put it all together. But yeah, just not being one dimensional, you can't just be a wrestler in MMA. You're gonna get smoked. You can't just be a jiu-jitsu guy, that's why it's mixed martial arts, right?
So you bring Frankie up, and being someone who was pretty successful in the NCAA, and Frankie was successful himself, but he never achieved his goals in wrestling in college. What do you think the difference for him was, being a guy who was a world champion, and in college who wasn't an All-American? Do you just think he had the perfect style for MMA?
I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying before, is sometimes you're just not satisfied, and you just know that, you were at that level, and, chips don't always fall the way they should, but you just kind of believe in yourself, and you just know that you're better than, where you had left off. And Frankie was one of those guys where, he was just top tough, just extremely tough, believed in himself, was around good people that believed in him. And, just being able to have that opportunity, right, to fight BJ Penn, at that time. And I think he kind of, I don't know how many people were expecting to win. I mean, being training with them and being from Jersey and all that, and watching his other fights, you knew that he's in the mix, and just proving it, twice. And then the Maynard fights were insane as well,
Yeah. Correct me
Curious.
if I'm wrong. Sorry, Rich.
Go ahead.
Have I seen you in the corner of a UFC fight, or am I making that up?
I would corner Philippe Nover. He's
All right.
out of Brooklyn. I did corner Frankie when he had fought Max Holloway in Canada. Corner David Branch. Those are the main three guys that I work with.
Is there any difference in being in that atmosphere opposed to coaching in college or coaching at Fargo or anything like that?
Yeah, it doesn't even fucking compare. Sorry. I just say like wrestling in big matches, like NCAA finals, like I wasn't nervous for that one bit, That was probably the fastest match of my life. But it was like nothing. It was just another match to me. Coaching, gets a little more like you're feeling the butterflies a little more, just because you don't have to control, in a wrestling match. I definitely would get nervous with Zach, being my brother and coaching him. But man, UFC fight when they, they'll like lead up to it, getting ready in the back, them getting their head, in the right space. And then, they're yelling, and next thing you know, it's like, okay, you got to get together. You're lined up, ready to walk out. And then they shut the lights out, man, and they start pumping that music. It's like surreal, it's one of the most, like, I don't know, alive you kind of feel, and then when you're at the cage, now it's like the next build up, it's like the other guy's coming out, and now everybody's kind of lights end up going back on, and everybody's starting to kind of square off a little bit, and then it's showtime, and Bruce Buffer, it's pretty wild being down there. And I wish I would have had the opportunity to fight if things had fallen right, but just being able to experience it and coach and kind of seeing it up close like that. I mean, you could really hear how hard guys are hitting and being hit, and the I don't know, just how fast those fights go too. Those in between rounds go super fast, and you have like split seconds to kind of, what are you going to say to a guy, in a minute, to make real adjustments that kind of matter, whether it's physical adjustments or mental adjustments. It's like in the heat of a real battle.
What was your 1-0 victory? Was that a submission? Was it a knockout? Was it a decision?
TKO.
TKO, ground and pound.
Yeah. It's up on YouTube. But I came out, hit a nice double off the ropes and kind of slammed him, and then ended up getting back to his feet and hit a little inside trip and got his back, 2 boots in, and then just a little ground and pound, and the ref stopped it. So, which was, like talk about adrenaline dump. That was like the first round of the fight, and it's a pretty surreal experience. And afterwards, just felt like I was just like exhausted, completely exhausted. So I was happy it ended in the first round.
Was that more nerve-wracking? Like you said, you weren't really nervous for the NCAA finals, were you pretty nervous for that? Is it a different aspect when you might get punched in the face?
Yeah, I mean, I was never in a real fight like
Mhm.
my entire life. Wrestling is like a fight. You get punched and training for the fight, right? You're feeling it, but I was never in like a fight, you know. Um, so I remember I had this guy, Kevin Mulhall. he was my main training coach then, and he repped in the UFC. But I remember the last thing, he was kind of telling me was like, just go out there and wrestle this guy, go out and wrestle him. And I remember warming up in the hotel room and I'm by myself for a couple of minutes before I walk out and just telling myself, like this is gonna be a happy day. We're not gonna, you're not gonna come down here and we're not gonna be upset. We're gonna win this. Because my brother was down. Friends came down. My boss flew down with a bunch of his friends and his brother, and it was one of those things where I wasn't fucking gonna lose this fight, no matter what. And I think kind of having some of those moments like NCAA finals or state finals in high school where you kind of, you know, just come up short and to have like one more opportunity to really like kind of set the record straight, and go out and win. And like it wasn't like a UFC title or anything special like that, but just to have a moment where people are there supporting you that could have gone sideways and it goes your way, that was special to me and kind of made it worth getting, punch in the face training and all that stuff, it's worth it.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Curious, you mentioned being around good coaches your whole life and talked a little bit about coming up with the Edge. You also, at Lehigh, got to spend some time with Coach Strobel. What was that experience like? And was that a big draw for you to go to Lehigh? Was it, I mean, obviously Lehigh is a very strong academic school, so I'm sure that was part of it too, but I'm assuming Coach Strobel was a pretty instrumental in why you went there.
Well, he was really, Ernie Monaco was the most instrumental because I was all set up to go to American when my older brother had gone. And then when I, lost states, that was kind of there, but the money kind of fell off a little bit, and I didn't sign early. I signed after the season. So if you remember, Nick Angen was supposed to go to Lehigh, right? And so Ernie was speaking with Strobel and kind of had that relationship ready. So Ernie just knew American wasn't going to be the best fit for me. So he was trying to push me, on Strobel. And, Ernie said to him, well, I thought if Nick Angen's not going to go because he was going to PG at Blair, maybe you want Dave. And Strobel said, okay, well, let me see. So we asked Santoro to if he knew anything about me. So we looked at an old state book. I think it was my junior or senior year, but it said, get this kid, his notes. So that kind of started setting me off. So I went up to Lehigh, visited during finals. I met like two guys on the team, and I can't come from a public school, so academics were okay. I wasn't super prepared, but I just took blind faith and believed in Ernie's advice and just went up there. And I had known Strobel obviously as an Olympic coach. Santoro, I watched him wrestle. But I had amazing coaches there. Besides Strobel, I had Pat Santoro, I had Joel Sharrett, who was a national champ, couple-time All-American, Iowa, for Gable. I had Karen McCoy while I was there. I had Kerry Colott as a coach. You had redshirted, and I was like his personal bitch, just seriously call me up and he's like, listen, we're training. And I was redshirting, so I had to do whatever he said, and I didn't get a takedown on for like 3 months. And I walked out of practice like bent over because it was getting front headed, for like 40 minutes. But Strobel was, he was, first year was tough. I think I started as a freshman, but I didn't really, Strobel came from being like an Olympic coach with dealing with open level guys, like they're not college kids. So that was his second year there. So at first I didn't really get him. I don't think he really got us, but he did help me jump levels. And one particular match, I was wrestling Reggie Wright at one of the like Esquire World Team Trials in the semis, and I was up like 8-0, about ready to tech him, and I got stepped over and pinned of a gut wrench, and I was just like, like again, something like this is kind of happening to me, and Shobo grabbed me and he's like, what's going through your head right now? Where are you at? I was like, I don't know. I was just trying to get the tech. I was right there. He's like, no, something else. And I was just like, I just kind of lost focus, and I just wanted the match to be over. It's just like, done with it. And that little lapse of focus cost me the match. And him saying that really got me. Like, it got me because, sometimes you got to be honest with yourself and kind of know where you're at and what happened, and I recognized it, and that was my sophomore year, and that really helped me kind of refocus things and think about the mental side of it that I need to really work on to become consistent and jump a level, and it definitely helped. So it went from having that match to being Colat's bitch for a year, and then junior year I took third, and then senior year second. So that was like a defining moment in my college career for sure.
Dave, everyone I've ever spoken to who's worked or been coached by Colot has had the same story. I had Blair Tugman as an assistant in high school, and he told me pretty much the same story you just told us. So I think that's hilarious.
Is he a nice guy?
Colot, yeah.
Outside of the mat?
Yeah. I mean, PA guy, PA, a little different in Jersey, everywhere else, but I got along great with him. He really he helped me out tremendously. Like I knew if I was wrestling him all the time, like who's tougher that I'm gonna wrestle, who's gonna be better. This is when he was like crushing everybody, and when he was getting all those medals taken away from him, he was at the top of his game. So I kind of felt like I'm prepared. I know this is the worst. So, but I finally got it take down, and that felt good. And then, you got to sneak one in sometimes.
Yeah. What was your progression, Dave? Because you wrestled 130 as a senior in high school, and then you graduated and in the NCAA finals, you wrestled 149. Was that the kind of the onus of taking that redshirt year, was to kind of bulk up a little bit?
Yeah. So freshman year I started as a true freshman. That was like the old rules. So it was day before weigh-ins. So I wrestled 134. But it wasn't kind of a ton of weight, like 5-6 pounds, And then sophomore year is when the weights changed halfway through the year. So it went from 134 to 141. And then the way it worked with our lineup, it was better for me to redshirt. And I needed a year or two to kind of just refocus everything. And I took that redshirt year. Another guy, Ryan Bernholtz, he was an All-American 149 as a sophomore. So it worked out. And then when I came back, I wrestled 49 junior, senior year, and it kind of fit in the lineup the best. My junior year, we took 7th in nationals as a team. Lehigh was the best we had done. So it was, it fit the lineup right, and it worked for me the way I needed it to.
Dave, Ernie had a pretty good recipe with the Edge, and it doesn't lie. It's stood the test of time year in and year out for my whole life. Has been pretty good. You just mentioned you spent some time with some great coaches. Is the Edge Hoboken that same recipe, or is there a little bit more spice on that, just coming from where you come from at Lehigh and all the great coaches you've worked with?
I mean, Ernie is one of a kind, even compared to all the other coaches I've had. So he's the top dog. He'll always be the best in my eyes for everyone that I've ever been coached by. And he knows me better than anyone else too. And he's like a father figure. Him and his wife's like a mother figure to me. So, they're like the highest you could be. At Edge, I'm fortunate that I have a lot of Stevens Institutes right here. Hoboken with the city, like we were saying before, there's a ton of ex-wrestlers that are in this area that all want to kind of scrap a little bit or, want to just get back in the mat. So when I start meeting new people in Jersey, it's small world, most people know the Edge. So if I could whenever I could pull coaches in to help out, I do. Like I said, I step back a little bit. So my manager, Elmer, is doing a great job of growing it and, pulling other guys in. My head coach, Colin's great. And just a bunch of guys, Sal Masciani, he helps out coaching. So a lot of ex-wrestlers in this area that, want to just get back on the mat. It's like a second job for most of them, and they're great with the kids. And, we're trying to, since we have a lot of different coaches from all over, we're trying to make it more cohesive, and just continuity. And I think that's what, we're Ernie. Ernie's there like all the time, we do have, like I said, Colin, Elmer, like our staples, but we have other guys coming in and helping out. So, and each guy brings their own like little mix to it, which is great,
And you said in your eyes, Ernie's the top of the top. What sets him apart? What is so unique about him that he's able to crank out so many successful wrestlers?
I just think he's seen so many different types of people and different types of wrestlers, that he kind of just knows. He almost knows, like he knows before just from having experience, and he sees the future ahead of, like where you're at. And once he's locked into you and he gives you that attention, he just knows how to develop the right way, just real solid fundamentals. He keeps you interested by watching video and different things as the sport evolves, so it's not like it's your bread and butter stuff, but you're also getting a taste of newer things. It keeps it exciting. Better analogies than anyone I've ever been around, for how to explain things and break things down and keep things so, like a 6-year-old can understand it, or a high level college Olympic athlete, so he's got the right language to explain things to for you to really understand the concept of what he's trying to teach. And he's got a big heart, he just, like I said, he's one of those guys like you want to win for, because he puts that much into you, cares about you. Yeah, so he'll always be the best to me.
It seems like a lot of the guys say that they talk with such passion about Ernie, and also hearing him talk on Wrestling Mindset with Coach Buxton. It's just a different wrestling mind, both of those gentlemen. And whereas any of the clubs that I kind of went to, it's just like there's a bunch of people that get in and then you just scrap. And, whoever survives is going to get better. Where it sounds, the more and more we talk to people from the Edge, that wasn't the case. And that there, like you said, there'd be times where he would be talking and, he even says it too. Sometimes he would have to explain to the parents why they weren't wrestling as much as they thought they would. It's just a different mindset. And it's, again, goes back to people loving the sport and having passion about it. And you hear a lot of people talking about coaching trees and stuff. And Ernie himself has quite an extensive coaching tree. And, you having the involvement, one being a grad assistant at Columbia, but then also doing some stuff with them with the NYRTC. We just had one former Edge alumni that was the head coach, is now down at Virginia Tech, and now we see another Edge alumni is coming in to come in and take over the program. And again, another Edge guy. Have you been in contact with Donnie? Are you guys friends? How does that work? It seems like a lot of Edge guys are pretty tight, regardless of if they're in the same age range.
Yeah, so to go back, I did listen to Tonelli on your podcast, he had told me that you had him on. So to know he's one of my favorites to coach too and be around. Obviously, so wish him all the luck down there. Donnie and I go back wrestling in elementary school together. We're close to weight. So, I know him since then. And in high school, we trained quite a bit as well, So I've always been tight with Donnie. And we were in the national finals the same year in 01. So, I'd known Donnie for a long time, just being around him. And then Glenn, his cousin. But yeah, I did speak to him when the Columbia job opened up, and he approached me to kind of talk about it. So I am involved with the Columbia program and the RTC and everything. So I was fired up when he told me he wanted to go after it, and I definitely, we had some conversations, past couple of weeks about different visions and how to get there. So now that he's in, I'm it's another Edge alumni, like you said in there, and I couldn't be happier for him, and really excited to see what he's going to bring to the program. I think Tonelli brought it to a high level, and I think Donnie's going to, continue to evolution. So, we're all looking forward to seeing some big things.
Yeah, it just gives us another program to root for and add another T-shirt to the collection for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dave, I got one more for you if Rich doesn't have anything else before we get into the Final Four. But you have mentioned that, wrestling, you didn't necessarily achieve all your goals or the things you thought you could have achieved in the sport. So Rich and I, you're a pretty damn good wrestler, and we hold you in high regard. I am curious, being a coach at the Edge, there's only 14 state champs every year. There's only 10 national champs every year. How do you deal with a kid that probably could have been on the top of the podium, but that weekend the cards didn't fall that way for him? How do you kind of deal with that wrestler when he comes back to you or when he gets off the mat? What are your kind of words of encouragement?
Well, I could kind of, to go back to Tonelli, what he had said, I'd send him a text about, when he had lost the nationals and, down in dumps. And, I'd been in that situation a bunch of times, and, fortunately, unfortunately, because I think being, when you can't be the top guy, you're kind of forced to dig deep and see what you're really made of, to come back on that backside. But it's just something I always thought. And my senior year, losing in the quarterfinals of the states, being a top seed, having a year before where I was up 9-0, I get pinned in the finals, and having these events happen to me. I just remember walking off the mat that Friday night at the States, and people want to come up to me and talk to me and console me, whatever you want to call it. And I didn't want a piece of it. I didn't want one part of it, because I knew I wasn't done yet. And now I'm on the backside. I got to come back. And and what I always thought and told myself was, you're good enough to win it. You're good enough to come back and take third and finish. Finish with the win. And the best way that I had in my head was, in that backside, everyone wants a reason why they want to pack it in. So if you give them a reason, then it's going to be a lot easier. So I knew, like, on that backside, you got to go hard and be intense and not feel sorry for yourself at all, and that's basically what I told Tonelli and pretty much any guys that end up in that situation. It's showing your character. And Ernie would tell me these things as well since I was a little kid. So it's not like it's just something that came out of nowhere, but just believing in yourself and just being pissed off, really more than anything else. I wanted to kill somebody, so just staying focused. When you got back to the arena and getting yourself ready, and then just looking to fucking hurt somebody, and battling back and not, not thinking about what could have been, because you can't control that. That's over. All you got is what's ahead of you, and taking that one match at a time on the backside and coming back for that, that third, and that's it. You'll feel better battling back than if that next match you just go in the tank. You're gonna feel worse. So just kind of staying, staying intense and keeping your head and not dwelling on, what could have been. You'll have plenty of time for that, But coming back for third definitely eases the pain than it could have been,
Get the next best thing.
That's it. That's all you could do.
Dave, I got one last one for you. You mentioned you got a little guy at home, a 6-year-old. Has he, I'm sure he's probably been around wrestling enough at this point. Has he taken the mat at all yet? And if not, how are you going to handle that sort of stuff?
Well, he kind of just started this past fall. I bringing him and another one, my buddy, his kids, same age, same class for a couple of years now. So I started bringing him in the room, maybe a little too soon. I mean, he's physical, he likes to wrestle. He's like a little boy, him and his buddy are trying to kill each other, don't pay attention for a lick, which is, it's fine. They're having fun. But I just see that he likes to roll. He's going to play every sport, right now. Ernie always said, make him a good athlete and then you could do anything, like you can't control your own body, how are you going to control somebody else's, all those things. So we're just going to ease into it with him, if he wants to do it. I have a great place for him. I don't coach him, I'll like play around with him, but he's at practice. He's at practice with the coaches, they're let them handle him. And then I'm just there for support, so we'll see. He's only 6. It's a long game.
Yeah,
I'm not too worried about it. If he wants to play another sport, that he wants to really focus on, that I'm fine with that. He can't be me, and I want him to be like his own man. So.
Right on. Always good to get that perspective, because coming up in New Jersey, you see some wild things from parents, and it's always good to talk to people that have a good perspective on it, whether it comes to competition or just training, and then also, just in general being an athlete and doing a lot of things and finding what you're passionate about. So appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling's brutal,
Yeah.
so you gotta keep it fun and, make sure they really like it, so. But everything you learn from wrestling is the best part about the sport,
Right. Takes you a couple of years after you get done with the sport sometimes to realize some of those lessons, but those light bulbs go off at some point in time.
Yeah. But it gets inbred in you, so
Yeah.
it's there. Just got to come out at the right time.
Yeah.
Dave, I lied because Rich just brought something up that we had out of the questions. Are you good on time, or you got to get out of here? All right.
No, I'm good.
Rich brought up being a parent, and that's a big part of the sport, and having a club, you're dealing with parents all the time. How do you deal with those crazies? Do you weed them out before you let them in the door? Do they slip through the cracks sometimes? Do you have to pull that over and tell them to act like an adult? How's that work?
I mean, I think being up here in Hoboken is a little different because in this area, like there's some pockets of wrestling, but a lot of parents aren't, it's not like a wrestling town per se, So you do have some parents that don't know the sport too much, and sometimes that's good and that's bad. Sometimes they'll like let you kind of go through the process and let you kind of manage it, and other times they think they know better. If I could have my manager or other coaches deal with, some parents, admittingly, I'll let them do it a little bit more. but it's really just having a conversation with them, and you could hear their piece, give them your piece, and then some parents will listen and some won't. Some think they'll know their ways the best way, and then other parents will kind of believe in you and believe in the track record and let you run with it. So I'm not gonna try and convince someone that thinks their way is the best. I'll help you out as much as I can, in some capacity, but at the end of the day, like, they either buy in or they don't. And I kind of keep a little more black and white, and I've seen it where parents come back around when the kids get a little older, and they start seeing it a little clearer. They're a little more experienced being around the sport, and then it kind of comes full circle. And I've seen it happen quite a bit, especially with like some of the kids that are good. They'll kind of go off, and then one way or another they find their way back, and hopefully it's not too late. But not to say one system's right or wrong, but I don't know, you just have enough experience and seen enough to know what works and what doesn't, and every kid's a little different, and family life's a little different, and so you got to think about that stuff as well.
You're way more laid back than me, sir. I appreciate your mindset and your insight,
Yeah,
and it's good to have a guy like you in the sport helping young kids achieve their goals and become young adults.
thanks.
Rich, final four.
Let's do it.
Dave, are you a coffee drinker?
Sure.
How
Yeah.
do you brew your coffee? How do you take it?
Uh, Usually black coffee. I like a good Americano though. Although I have to admit, a good Celsius in the morning is, doing me good at this point too.
Okay. You have a favorite coffee shop in Hoboken?
Um, Not really. I mean, I'm more of a homebrew Keurig
Okay.
kind of guy, not as fancy, I guess.
All right.
That
Good
stuff
enough.
that stuff stuff adds up after a while.
It sure does. It sure does. I listen to Patrick Bet David from time to time, and they were talking just about the economy and stuff. And one of the guys was talking about how people complain about not being able to save money, but they buy $6 cups of coffee
Yeah,
multiple times a day.
yeah, it's crazy, and yeah. So yeah, that's probably what motivates me to kind of just make my own brew. I got free coffee at the office too, so
Yeah,
can't beat
I hear
that.
you. Nothing wrong with a homebrew. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Dave Esposito?
Um, I like a good long shower in the morning, kind of get myself a little focused, just start thinking about like what I got ahead in the day, and my body hurts, so nice warm water kind of loosens me up a little bit. I have been trying to, one of my bosses, he got me doing this routine. He told me a long time ago, but I'll do 100 push-ups and sit-ups every morning. So I hit that, first thing.
Is that before or after the shower?
Before,
Before. Okay. All right.
yeah, work up a little bit of a sweat. And then I think what's been cool is being up here. I could walk my kid to school and walk to work. So that's like it's kind of cool to have 10 minutes with my kid and just you know shoot the shit and kind of see what's up. And we play a game. We see a Bronco. Whoever sees four Bronco first, you get a point. So he's ahead of me, but that's only because whenever I see it first, he always gets a point. But it's good. It's good. He doesn't like to lose.
Right on. What are you walking around at these days? What's your fighting weight?
Uh, it's funny. Like last year, I was up to like almost like 168, 170, and then I was feeling a little slow and feeling a little older. 46. So I'm nipping at you, Rich.
Yeah.
So you start feeling a little more. So now I'm down like the other day I weighed 155, but that
Nice.
was I'm a little nuts though too, because when I work out, even now it's 90 degrees. I got a gym and in my building, but now I'll throw spandex sweats, plastic top, you know, long sleeves, sweat. Um, so I look like I'm still like a wrestler, I kind of feel like one. Um, so I don't know. I like covering up, get a good sweat in. So I probably walk around now like 160. I feel good at that.
All right. Did you fight at 155 or 145?
It was no way in. So
Oh, no way. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Dave, you mentioned being crazy and putting your plastics on and your spandex. Rich always used to yell at me when we were living together because I'd go out the house with my sweatsuit on and my sweatshirt tucked into my sweatpants. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It
Mm.
feels good, man."
It does. It does. Now I like being in college when, everybody's kind of, you know, like normal civilians, and then you come in and you look like a maniac, like, Scully on, and, I always knew I lost 5 pounds when my sneakers were soaked and I could
Squishing.
kick sweat around. Yeah, you know.
That that's funny because my indicator for 5 pounds was when it from the outside looks like I pissed myself, but it was sweat. I was like, all right, that's 5 pounds.
Yeah,
Dave,
sounds about right.
yep. What are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Um, well, I listen to my boss has a good podcast called Business Untitled. It's like entrepreneurial, just all around, just good, motivational, makes you dream big. I like that one. Um, Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, Shane Gillis and Matt
Mm-hmm.
McCusker. Love
Yep.
love those guys. Kind of keep me young, maybe in my head, just easy to listen to,
Yeah.
and Gillis and Matt they're fucking hilarious. Listen to them. What else? Music wise, I'm a '90s kid, so Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, that whole crew, and then some good whiny emo stuff, like Get Up Kids. I'll throw on. That was a good mix when I was training back in college. Funny enough, a little Cat Stevens lately. I don't really know why. Just kind of came across it. But for most part, alternative. You know, some good old Biggie too. I'm in that mood.
Being so close to the city, you ever get any fist pumping?
No, only if I go to DJs. That's it.
Okay. All right.
Only, I gotta stick around past happy hour for that.
Oh man, good times at DJs.
Yeah.
Dave, last one we have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures?
Um, Not like too much of a like kind of ice cream or sweets guy. Uh, I mean, I love pizza, you know. I'm always up for a good slice, finding I like checking out different spots when I get a chance. Um, but for the most part, that's probably one of my only really come to mind now,
Plain slice, pepperoni. How do you roll?
pepperoni for sure.
Pepperoni. All right.
Yeah, yeah, my kid on the other hand, he'll eat ice cream all night, every night, you know. So he's got that sweet tooth, but I don't know. I'm not like really never really had that like kind of, like I don't know. I guess when I'm cutting weight, you get a little bit more, but since I've been done with college and I never really cut a lot of weight, I always tried to stay real disciplined, so it was pretty easy for me.
Except in Fargo in 93 when you tried to make 98.
Yeah, I know. That was a rough one. I was Yeah, Fargo's hot out there. Not
Yeah.
good with plastics, you know.
Well, Dave, it's been an honor and pleasure having you on and chatting with you,
Yeah,
reminiscing a little bit, talking about wrestling, talking about the Edge, getting the insight on some of the coaches that you've been able to work with, Ernie specifically, and hearing all that good stuff. And it's just great to catch up after, you know, all these years. So we really are honored and pleasure to have you on with us tonight.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's great having, a little time to catch up. Where you at right now? You're in South Carolina,
I'm in Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville? Got
Yeah,
it.
Jimmy and I were
Oh,
both in Colorado I was there for 5 years, and then I actually got an opportunity to come down here to take over a wrestling program. So I was coaching wrestling last year, and then
oh,
another
nice.
opportunity opened up to take on a physical education, strength and conditioning role at another school. So I'm doing that, but been in Greenville coming up on 2 years in August.
That's awesome.
It's
A
hot
lot of
down
people
here.
from a lot of people from North moving down there, huh?
Yeah, it's getting crowded. I mean, it was crowded
Yeah,
when I got here, but it's now that I'm actually in the city itself, it's there's certain times you just don't want to be on the road.
yeah, I hear you.
But
Well, if you guys end up at the Jersey Shore again, let me know. I'm
yeah,
always down to
absolutely.
hit some Point Pleasant, some tiki bar.
Okay. A little fresh squeeze.
That's it.
Dave, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good catching.